If you want to create a professional looking rule sheet or rule book for your board game or card game without spending an absolute fortune on graphic design software or printers or manufacturers, this is the video for you, okay? I'm going to show you how to lay out the graphics on a free-to-use website called Canva, which you may well have come across, and how to print that document along with the rest of your board game components using a print-on-demand service called Launch Lab from the company, the board game manufacturer, Launch Tabletop. I'm Adam Porter, I'm a board game designer from Wales in the UK. I've got a number of published games. I tend to license my games to publishers, and I create my prototypes using a process very similar to this. Now, if you're going to create professional games, you might want to look at more extensive, expensive, and more difficult to use graphic design software, but you can actually get a really, really good result with Canva that is perfectly good enough for creating exceptional looking prototypes and certainly good enough for creating games just for your own personal use. And so that's what this video is about, how to use that simple software to create something that just looks great without needing to do extensive learning about graphic design software or spending a fortune. So what we're talking about is creating rule books that might look something like this. With Launch Lab, you can create a variety of different sizes. These are all rule books with multiple pages in them, but you can also create rule books which are just a single sheet but neatly folded. And I think sometimes for small games, these are just what you need, okay? Something really simple like this. This particular type of rule book is designed to fit into a deck box like this. So a deck box is a very simple little cardboard box. It's probably your cheapest option for making a nice professional quality box, but the rule sheet fits inside. It's actually sized the same as the type of card that you've got in there. So in this case, it's bridge cards. So that just slots in, and that's a neat little rule book. But you could also use a little fold-up rule book like that if you're making a small card game. I think it's quite nice to have just a single little rule sheet, particularly for something simple. So you could use one of those fold-up ones to go in there. Okay, so you've got a bunch of options available on the Launch Lab website. Let's go on to that now. So we go on to launchtabletop.com. and you'll get a page something like this. You can sign up or sign in, I've already done that, and it will bring you to your projects page. Now I've got a number of projects on there because I've used this service quite a lot. But let's go on to, we could create a project. I've already done that and I've called it Canva Test. So let's click on that. Now previously I made a video about how to make playing cards using Canva and producing them on Launch Lab, and so that's what this test is from, and you can see the cards here. But let's add a component, and the component we're going to want to add is a rule sheet. Okay, I don't want to make a rule book at the moment. A rule book would have multiple pages, and there's lots of different sizes in there. You can also make this longer, thinner rule book, which it says for deck box. Those are long, thin boxes. But I'm not looking for the rule book at the moment. I want to create a rule sheet. Now the process is exactly the same. So everything I show you here is going to relate also to creating these rule books. You just have more pages, essentially. So if we click on Rule Sheet for Tuck Box, it gives us a variety of different sizes, and as I say, they're named after the size of the cards that would also fit in that tuck box. So you could have a bridge size rule sheet, a poker size, or a tarot size. Okay, so let's go with, I want bridge size. And you can also select your quantity. I only want one rule sheet in an individual game. So just the one. And I want 4x4 panels. There's going to be 16 panels, it's basically going to be one sheet, double-sided with multiple panels on it. So let's click on that one. And we'll end up with a fold-out sheet, something like that. Okay, like it's showing on the screen there. Okay, so add component. And what it's going to do now is create templates that I can use to lay out the necessary information on my rule sheet for when I then go to print it on Launch Tabletop. And if you look on the left-hand side of the screen here, you can see the price total there, it says is $2.31. So that's how much it's costing for this rule sheet. Now, if you produce multiple copies of this game, that cost goes down dramatically the more copies you produce. But with Launch Lab, you can create one copy or you can create hundreds of copies, and the price will reduce accordingly. You can see now it's given me template files here. I can click on that button, and what will happen now is the template will leap up, there you go, you saw it, leaping up into my download folder. So if I go up into my download folder, there it is, rule sheet, tuckbox. So I'll drag that out onto my desktop there. Let's reduce this. Double click on it to open the zip file. There's my actual folder. I'll put that in the trash. And if I double click on here, first thing it does is gives me instructions. If I double click on those, it tells me, I think the most important information you have on here is the size that we need, the size of image. So we need an image that's 4,270 pixels by 2,770 pixels. We're going to need two images, one for the front and one for the back, but they're going to be exactly the same size. Another important point here is it says exclude die lines before submission. What's that all about? Well, it's talking about this section up here, die lines. So we're going to need to put a template into our picture so we know where information goes. And it talks here about fold, margin, cut, bleed. I'm going to cover all of that in a moment. But the important thing we need to remember is 4270 by 2770. I'll probably forget that instantly. Next thing to do then is to go into Canva, okay, canva.com, and I tend to use Google Chrome for Canva. I don't find it works very well with Safari. I think it does work with some other browsers like Firefox, but I tend to use Chrome. So here's canva.com, and we want to create a design. So let's click on Create a Design over here. Now bear in mind, on Canva, I've got a paid account. You don't have to have a paid account. You can use Canva for free. You'll just have slightly reduced options, okay, and a significantly reduced options in terms of the amount of different images, clip art that's available to you. I pay about €12 a month because I use it professionally in my day job. I use it for designing YouTube thumbnails and images on my videos. I use it for game design stuff, so I use it all the time. So it's worth it for me. But if you want to use a free account, you can do everything that we're talking about today, pretty much everything. So let's look at down here, creating a design. We don't want any of this, whiteboards, docs, logos, flyers. I'm not interested in that at the moment. I want custom size at the bottom here. So let's click on that. And of course, I've forgotten what the custom size we needed is, as I said I would. So let's go back to our instructions. They said 4270 by 2770. 4270 by 2770. And create new design. There we go. We have a document which is exactly the right size in terms of number of pixels. What we don't have is anything there telling us how to lay out the information. So the next thing we're going to do is go back into our folder we downloaded from Launch Tabletop, and we're going to take the pixel template. It doesn't matter whether we use the back or front because they're exactly the same because the two sides are the same size. So let's drag the front pixel template into Canva, drop it in there. There we go. There's our template. Okay. Now, it's not quite the right size. So it is the right proportions though, and that's important. Let's drag it from the corners and it will click into place. Really easy. You can't go wrong here because it clicks into position. Perfect. Now we have our template. We know where we want our information. So I'll go through that a little bit with you. You can see there are orange lines here, dotted orange lines. Those are the folds, okay? When your rule sheet folds up, this is where it's going to fold into its 16 different sections, okay? That's the orange lines. I'll zoom in a little bit and then let's drag up to the corner here. You can see there's a dotted blue line. That dotted blue line is where all your important information needs to go. Any important information that you desperately need mustn't go outside that blue line because it could accidentally get cut off. All right, it won't get cut off if it's within that blue line. So any text, any important images, all within that blue line. Really important. The red line is where the machine is intending to cut. Bear in mind, there's a little bit of give here. It might get it just slightly wrong. That's why we've got the important information in the blue line. But the red line is where it's intending to cut. And in my experience, with Launch Tabletop, the quality control is excellent. So you're very likely it will cut in that right place, but don't take the chance. Important information in the blue line. Red line is the cut line. And then we've got this pink area, which is called bleed. So the bleed area shouldn't really be on the final product, okay? That's all going to be cut off. But if the machine does cut just in slightly in the wrong place, you don't want a nasty white line around the edge of your sheet. So we extend our artwork right up into that bleed area. So if the machine does miscut, it's not going to look odd. Okay, so that's how our template works. And the first thing I do when creating my rule sheets is I want to add a nice background. So I'm going to go to Elements on the left-hand side of the screen here, and I'm going to type in geometric pattern. There we go. And we have numerous geometric patterns that you could choose to put in as your background. Some of them have crowns on. If they have crowns, that means that you have to have a paid account in order to use them. But there's many here that don't have those crowns on them. Okay, so let me look through and see if I can find something that we like. I think I might go with this one. So this is a free one. Okay, it's very pink, isn't it? Let's drag that up here to make it bigger. I want to stretch it out to the side here really. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to double click on it and that allows me to crop it. So let's reduce that down there. So we've cropped it a bit. Done. And now I'm going to extend it up like that until it clicks. There we are. There we are. Fine. Good. Not sure about the pinkness of it though. It's very pink. So I'm going to change that colour. Click on the pink at the top here and I can change that colour to whatever I like really. Let's go to a nice teal, something like that. Okay, good. It's quite distracting as a background that though, isn't it? I can't really write on that. If I put text on top of that, you're not going to be able to see it. So let's create an overlay over the top of it. We'll go to Elements, we'll type in rectangle, add a shape rectangle, and it gives me the same color. If I put this into just in the blue line, okay, so just where the important area goes, then we'll have a little border around the outside. I'm going to drag that down here, something like that. Okay, and I want it a bit paler so I can write in it a bit more neatly. So let's click on the color at the top there, and let's just make that a bit paler, something like that. Will do. So let's try copying this with a right click, copy, and then right click, paste. Canva wants to see text and images copied to the clipboard, allow, there we go. I've now got a copy. And of course you can do that with a shortcut if you know the keys on your Mac or PC to copy and paste. It's the same as any word processor or any other document really, any other application really. So you can see this is now obscuring our template, which I don't really want. I can't see the template anymore. So if I go to position, and then you can see under layers, if we were on a range, I can't see it. But if we click on layers, I can see my different layers here, and I can drag the template back up to the top so we can see it again. Okay? So that's really useful. And now I can start to lay out images and text on here. So let's put some text in. I can choose a heading for my game, a title for my game. I can use all these different font styles. I'm going to call it, well, let's go, which font style do I want? Let's go with this. Power Workout. There we go. We'll put that up there. I don't know what my game's going to be called. Let's call it Power Rules. I don't know whether the game's called Rules or whether it's called Power Rules. I don't know. It's called Power Rules. Then I want to put in some text. So we're still on the text section on the left here. Add a text box. I can drag this with these little arrows down here. I'll drag it up to the top. And I can start writing what my game's all about. So this is a game. I better delete this bit. This is a game about going to the gym. Obviously that. I could probably write something a little bit better than that, but for now it gives you an example of how we would do it. And I can adjust this by dragging here, okay? And that's going to help me to fit it into one of my folded sections. I can also increase the size by dragging in the corner, like that, or by using the font up here with the size, I can do it like that as well. Okay? So I'm going to make it a bit bigger, and then I'm going to drag it across to fit it into that fold there. This is a game about going to the gym. And I can change the color of that text by clicking the color section here, make it a bit darker, and maybe make it bold. There we go, this is a game about going to the gym. And now maybe I want to add some images. Well, let's go to Elements, and I can type in gym. And you can see that I've already had a look here earlier, and I chose this here. Okay, let's go with that. And I can even change the color of this by clicking up here. So let's go here and add in that blue color again. I could change the white if I wanted to. I could change that to black. I don't like that. I'm going to stick with the white. Okay, and then I can even go to Edit Image and add an outline if I want to. So let's go to Shadows. I went to Edit Image, Shadows, Outline. Black outline. I don't really like the black. So let's change the color of that and go with something like, should we go a bit purple? See how that looks? Something like that. There we go. Right, so we're getting somewhere. We're adding images, we're adding text, we're starting to lay it out, we're aware of how much room we've got. Usually I will have written out my rules on a Word document first, so I know how much I've got to fit in here, and I'm probably copying and pasting into these various different text boxes that I add onto this sheet. I can even add images from outside of the document in here. So if I come out of Canva, I could drag an image in from my desktop. So let's have a look at doing that. Maybe I want to bring in these sunglasses. So I drag it in, drop it into the picture, and that's fine. It's got this horrible white border in there though. And so there is a way in Canva of getting rid of that, but only if you've got a paid account. So with my paid account, I can go on to Edit Image, and I can go to Background Remover. You can see it's got a little crown on there to show that it's a paid feature. But if I click on that, the white will disappear, and there we are. I have my image in Canva. Okay. Now, one particularly useful way of using this feature of bringing images in is that you can bring images in from the cards and components that you've also created earlier on Canva. If you've watched my previous video about making playing cards using Canva, you can use the images you created for examples in your game. So if we go onto my desktop, you can see here I've got this folder, Little Words Cards. These are the cards that I produced in the previous video. So if I want to bring in, say, a card like this, I can drag it in, and there we go. I can just drop in the components into my rule sheet, move them around, resize them. I can rotate them. I could even put an outline on it if I wanted to. So there we go. And to make it look more like a card, maybe I'll round the corners. Something like that. Okay, I can do all sorts of things with it. And now, if I put a text box alongside that, so I'll go onto Text, add a text box alongside it, and I can drag that up here and write example, add a G card. I don't know what I'm writing, okay? I can resize that, and so on. You can see how this starts to create a rule book. Now there are key things that you're going to want to put in your rule book, and I'll show you the layout of a rule book that I've actually made. Here we are. So this is the rule sheet for the game that I was showing in my Making Playing Cards video, and there's a basic format that I use for pretty much all my rule sheets. So I start off with my title, I'll put contents, I'll put little headings in there, so I've used a different font for the headings. Okay, I'll put my information here for how publishers can contact me. Pictures of my components, and then I'll talk about setup for the game. I'll put a guide down the left-hand side for how many players can play, how long the game takes, and what age range, and I've created that using clip art just from Canva. The goal of the game, how do you win, a very brief overview of the game in simple terms, and then detail of how each turn and round works. Maybe some examples. I've dragged cards in here to create this example. Arrows, speech bubbles, they're all taken from the elements in Canva. Nice and simple. I talk about what happens at the end of the round. I talk about what happens at the end of the game. I talk about how you score. And then I have a little section where I talk about specific cards. And I might even put in a little FAQ, frequently asked questions, of the sort of things that come up in playtests, just to highlight certain areas that people sometimes miss from the rules. So that's how I lay out pretty much all my rule books, no matter how complex. And they might extend over multiple pages. In this case, it's just 2 sides. What you can't see on these ones is the template. And that's because I've deleted the template previously. But if I put the template back in, if I go onto uploads, so if I drag that into position, you'll be able to see that's how the template looked before I deleted it. Okay, so the folds, you can see they're neatly going down the center. Everything essential is contained within that blue line, but the image does extend into the bleed, so we're not going to get an awkward white line around the edges if the machine miscuts by accident. That all looks great. If I want to delete that template, which I definitely do because I don't want the lines on the final printed thing, I go into position, layers, let's find the template, where is it? Here it is. Click on the dots and delete. And it's gone. Now to create my second page, what did I do there? I clicked on this symbol here, duplicate page, and that gives me a second page with exactly the same layout, and I can just change the text and move things around. And so that's what I did to create the back of the document. So if I delete that, we now have page 1 and page 2. I've actually given them the title page 1 and page 2. You can write anything you like up here, and then you go to share. So if I click on share, download, and it'll ask me which pages. Well, I want all pages, page 1 and page 2. This is the correct pixel size here. So I click done and download. And there we go, it's downloading for me. Now, while that's downloading, I'm just going to remind you of a few things that you might want to think about when writing your rulebook, okay, before you get to this stage when you're laying it out on Microsoft Word or whatever you're using. Before laying out the graphics, think about using the active voice. What I mean by that is, in a rulebook, it ought to say, on your turn, you do this. On your turn, you pass players to the left. On your turn, you pick an action. Not, on a player's turn, they pick an action. On a player's turn, they pass cards to the left. Using that second person rather than third person, you do this, makes it much more dynamic, easy to read. It feels more personal, more casual, more informal. It's a much better way to write a rule book. Okay, so on your turn, you do this. Second thing is think about capitalization. Which words are you capitalizing and which ones are you not? Okay, so if you're talking about specific components, I find myself frequently wanting to add capital letters in there where there's no need. But the worst case is when you're inconsistent with this. If you're using capitals sometimes and not other times, your rulebook starts to look really messy. You also need to be consistent with your terminology. If some parts of the rulebook talk about a deck of cards and other parts of the rulebook talk about a pile of cards, the players are going to get confused. Are we talking about a deck, a pile? Are they the same thing? I don't know what's going on. So be consistent with your terminology. Players are going to make assumptions about how to play your game. So if there are cards in your game, for example, players are going to expect to pick them up, hold them in their hand. Maybe your game doesn't involve picking up the cards. Maybe they always remain on the table. Sometimes your rulebook needs to point out the things that you don't do in this game, how your game differs to other games, to stop players searching through the rulebook going, well, when do I end up picking up these cards? And they're not going to find it because you never pick up the cards in this game. Okay, I know this from experience, believe me, I've written a lot of rule books. Think about repetition. Okay, if you repeat the same information over and over again in your rule book, players are going to start to get confused. Have I read this before? This seems very similar to what I read before. Why is it saying it again now? If you say something, probably just say it once. And then if you're going to highlight something, make it very clear that this is a highlighted rule, just a reminder. You can even put the word remember. Remember, this is a really key important rule, or maybe you put the reminders in your FAQ at the end of the document, okay? Just some key pointers. My file has now downloaded, so I will be able to take that little word rule sheet out of my downloads up there. I've got it in a little zip file. Let's double click it and it appears. We'll put the zip, the white thing, not sure what you call those, into the trash, and I've got my rule sheet. If I double click on that, I've got 2 pages, page 1 and page 2, and they're ready to be uploaded into Launch Tabletop. So let's go to launchtabletop.com. Remember, previously we clicked on template files, but now we're going to click on add images and create PDF. So if we click on that, we get front image and back image. I'll click on front image first, rule sheet, page 1. There we go, it's appeared. Back image, page 2. It's appeared. Now I can preview the final result by clicking on this little eye symbol here. I would strongly advise you to do this because it's going to show you what your thing is going to look like after it's cut. Okay, I can look at the next page as well. Definitely look at the previews. Don't just assume it's going to be fine because it might not be. All right, and then once we've done the previews, we can create the PDF. And it's going to take a few moments to upload onto Launch Lab, and then there we are, PDF is available. Preparing PDF. Okay, so in a minute I'll have the PDF, and again I would do a double check before I'm submitting the files to Launch Tabletop. So that is basically how you create a rule sheet for Launch Tabletop, and you get a nice professional quality sheet. It could be a booklet, okay, with multiple pages on it. It's exactly the same process. It's just you don't have we don't have 2 images, you might have 8 images and so on. Now, if you're going to use Launch Tabletop to produce your game, use the discount code Adam in Wales. Okay, if you use Adam in Wales, all one word, as a discount code, you'll get 20% off your order. Remember that you're going to have to factor in shipping, and that's going to be variable depending where you are in the world, but Launch Tabletop does ship in a really timely manner to anywhere in the world, okay, and at an affordable rate. If you're in the UK, and probably in some other countries I would imagine, you might get some tax added on, okay, so just bear that in mind. There might be a bit of VAT added on or something like that. It depends on the price of your order, so just bear that in mind, but hopefully the 20% discount using the Adam in Wales discount will reduce that or you know, negate that added tax that you have on there. Your product's going to arrive quite quickly, and there you go. You've got something you can share with publishers. You can share with family and friends. You know, you're going to have a quality product. This is a professional manufacturer of board games, so they make the sort of games that you can see on the shelves around us. So your product is going to be every bit as high quality as those. And the more you use Canva, the more high quality results you're going to get from it as well. I'm going to make another video where we're going to look at creating box sizes, so watch out for that one. But my PDF has loaded now, so shall we have a look at it? If I double click on that, it's going to go into my downloads folder. There we are. And again, you can see the die lines on it. They won't be in the printed thing, but it's just giving you one final chance to check your work and make sure it's all looking okay. And you're going to end up with a nice little rule sheet that looks just like this. So it folds out. It's got our 4x4 spaces on it. The same on the reverse. And that is exactly what I wanted for the game. It fits really neatly into my little tuck box here. I can just slot that in. It's exactly the same size as the cards. And there we go. And I'm going to show you how to lay out the design for the box in a future video. I hope you enjoyed the video and found it useful. If you did, please watch some others on my channel. There are hundreds of videos on this channel all about board game design, all aspects of it, and pitching and the industry and everything, okay? So go and have a search through it. If you want to create playing cards, watch this video next.